Hey guys, I'm Raphael. I'm the creator and lead of Nimoyd. I mentioned this because originally we were just two guys. It was just Jeffrey and me for a very long time, and eventually I hired more people, and we are now finishing the game. So you actually see already the game, at quite some stage. And yeah, I will talk later about the release date when I will answer a few questions that came up. So this is actually this is our very first devlog, or actually my very first devlog and so bear with me, and I hope that I do not sound like too much like I'm like a noob. And in this devlog, I'd like to talk about some game basics, buildings and crafting. I mean, you already see this as by the footage. So the footage is, and the game will running like in the background while I'm talking. But you see, that he's doing stuff, he's crafting, he's gathering like resources. Now you see like the crafting screen. You maybe see some buildings. And at the end of the video, I will also talk about dungeons and cities, because so many people actually ask about cities and dungeons. So I will maybe cover 2 or 3 questions, because the rest were basically about cities and dungeons, and I think it's better to show the actual game in this regard. And I think then we should be fine. So what is the Nimoyd about? I mean, you already see some footage, you already have like an idea. Nimoyd is not a hardcore game. I mean, I am playing survival games a lot, probably too much, and for really many years, since the beginning. And both on mobile and also on desktop and all kind of, I mean, for some reason I really enjoy this kind of games. And I think if you're enjoying this crafting, gathering stuff and building stuff, I think you know what I mean. And so Nimoyd actually came up. I had the idea for Nimoyd when I had trouble with the mid to late game content in survival games or in open world or generated open world games, because in my experience, or at least how I felt, many of those games are actually super cool at the beginning, and then eventually mid to late game, it's kind of a weird, it's like you all of a sudden you become a bit annoyed by all those hardcore mechanics like food and water. I think if you're playing those games a lot, you know what I mean. And so, yeah, and Nimoyd actually has a number of mechanics that actually are trying to solve this issue. So it's not just the terrain, it's not just, the number of, a few thousands of items and monsters and sci-fi and fantasy lore and faction system. But it's really also because, how the world actually responds to your actions, the dynamic faction system, the cities, the dungeons, how it works and how it combines. And my hope is, on top of multiplayer, but it's just cool. It's just cool to play. It's fun to play, and we are trying to make a difference here. So I hope that in the end you enjoy it, and as much as we do. Yeah. As you already saw in the previous footage, while I'm talking, you saw that, for instance, he is digging stuff. He is destroying stuff. He's collecting resources. You can of course dig down, but there's sort of plenty of assets and plenty of obstacles and plenty of resources at the surface, for many reasons. And then you collect those stuff, and then you can actually craft new items. And before you do that, you can also unlock new items or new recipes, which is sort of like a skill system. We call it skill, but it's actually broader. There's actually more to the skills. It's not just about unlocking new recipes, which is something that you will then maybe see in a few months when I talk a little more in detail about this. So here now he's just running around and digging stuff, because previously he was of course destroying some surface assets, but now, as you can see, so the terrain and everything and the voxels are actually fully destructible, and of course part of this whole crafting, building as an environment. This is of course still work in progress, but I think you see how it's working already. And there are actually many challenges to this because of the camera perspective. Those, when you see, I think, some of those screenshots or see some footage, it's, when you think about it, there's actually more complicated part of this. When you go down and when you really dig deep. And what happens then with the camera, because this is really challenging. This is not simple stuff, and I think it's maybe one of the reasons why this camera perspective is not that popular, because it's really a technical challenge. So now he's of course running around, he's now doing stuff, and I think pretty soon he will then try to build something So maybe I can now use the time to answer a few questions before we go, into cities and dungeons. Yeah, thank you for that. So this is, I had to add this because I also received like hater emails, and it's like, yeah, this is worth nothing, blah blah blah. But this was, it's cool. So big thanks to you. I actually received like some very positive feedback, very positive comments. So I really appreciate this. Thank you. Oh yeah, this was a very good point. Thanks Jan, for pointing this out, because now we have a Discord server. It will, I hope now, slowly grow, and I will then I will try to post as much as possible in the Discord server, so you're always up to date. Thank you for that. Maybe before I answer more questions, because I wanted to answer more. Maybe let's talk a bit about what is happening right now, because now, as previously, you have this survival thing. You're walking around, you're collecting stuff, you're crafting stuff, and of course, there's there are thousands of items in the game already. So now at this point, he's actually using the terrain, and he's using assets to build structures. And from this perspective, I think it's quite cool. So before you ask, because there was somebody who asked us about Fortnite buttons. Yes, I think we are experimenting with the idea of having Fortnite buttons, and so in this perspective as well. Because for such a game, I think you will always have players who want to build. They want to have a nice building with paintings, and I think you will see it in a second. Yeah, you see that what happens when someone has more skill than I. I think this was Jeffrey who did this, and within I think 1 or 2 hours or so. So you can really do a lot of stuff with the engine, because the engine is actually quite powerful, and it works. And the editor is sort of like it works similar to Sims. Oh, by the way, this is how it looks when you are inside the building, which is still in development, as you can see. But the engine, I think this is where the engine also has its strengths, and where also the big difference is. So, because as you can see by the building has nothing and almost nothing in common with Minecraft, right? And not with Terraria. So this is something new. And there are, of course, some downsides. There are, of course, some difficulties and challenges, as you can imagine, technical, which you will see in a second with using the city. And also it's cool because everything is destructible. Of course, it comes later to the final game. Not everything will be destructible as this one, because otherwise, all the players will. Because I know, what will happen. Of course, all of us will go into the cities, with them basically launch nukes, because there are actually nukes in the game, by the way. So as well, as speeders and like port racing and this kind of stuff. And so, but I think I hope it shows you how powerful it is, which means you can actually do whatever you want in this regard. And of course you can enable creative mode, and in the creative mode you're basically then just doing only this. And since I hope it's easy to use, compared to some other games that we had before, like in the past, then or that we saw in the past, I think that you would then enjoy it. Here you can also see that she is talking now, because it's now a different character, because there are multiple characters up to 18. She's actually talking to some NPCs that are actually placed inside the city. She can actually go inside all the buildings and do kind of stuff. They're not fully functional yet, all the buildings, and they look also quite empty inside, but of course this will change in the future, because it's just a matter of time. Because I think in our regard, you have always to keep in mind that we are not the biggest team, and everything is self-funded. So it's it's not like Hytale that actually got bought. I think Hytale or Hypixel, they got bought recently by Riot Games. So, and I think for good reason, because when you have so many assets, you have and you have those very expensive animations, then of course. So in a second you will see the dungeons, and now you saw the cities. The reason is because so many people actually asked about this. They wanted to specifically some more content on this. I do not add those comments here and do not mention it, because there were so many. So this is the reason why I show so much footage in this regard. Which means I didn't show some other stuff. Here, by the way, you saw also now the map. You see that there's like a world map. There are streets. There are different kind of cities, villages, and stuff. So yeah, the whole world is quite alive and actually quite dynamic. The factions are actually dynamic and doing a lot of things that I will not cover in this video, but maybe in a later video. So yeah, now we are underground, and yeah, the underground system is really part of the terrain. So which means you can, of course, you could technically, you can really go down and destroy everything. In this video, I'm not doing this. Maybe I will do this another time, where you actually can use, I don't know, like rocket launchers or something to dig holes, which is cool, but it's of course game breaking. So when you want to have a dungeon system, with rewards, monsters, bosses, and stuff, yeah, this is of course in development. You cannot just do this, So what is happening here? She's now walking around just to show the basic of the dungeons, right? And I think she will encounter someone eventually. But I think, by the way, now she gets stuck because there's actually something there. It's just so dark because she does not have a torch. So there's also like a lighting system, shading system underground, collision systems. And this is also multiplayer. So, it will be multiplayer ready, which means, yeah, it's a bit, it's like, it's not, sometimes we were like joking or like hoping the game would be first person, because first person is so much easier, really. Because when you have such a camera, as you can see, you're constantly occluding stuff and hiding stuff and so on. So there's a whole system behind it, which in multiplayer, as you can imagine, it's kind of a thing, because you actually because now you are in a scene where somebody else might be on top of you and maybe in the next room. So yeah, this is interesting, technically speaking. But yeah, this is the challenge, and this is of course the challenge and the fun about the game.